hadn't seen her since the week she was born.
Oh, goodness gracious.
She's
Wow,
doubled.
Here's the
that's-
rookie.
She's doubled in weight.
I'm glad I'm sitting next to you.
Wow,
Holding
goodness.
herself up, wanting to try and walk.
Oh, goodness.
We have to go through the hazing ceremony before this one starts, or not?
We'll do that later on.
Oh, later.
Yeah, thank you.
It's better after dark. And
You don't want an audience for it.
I can't see it.
you do have health insurance, don't you?
Yes.
Okay, then you're okay.
You see it? 2 minutes, huh?
I just came from a swim meet, so that's why I'm a
I
little
understand.
Oh, yeah. I told John about that one.
Yeah.
I saw that just before we went down there.
Well,
He said, it's no wonder. Is that what your son said?
no, he said, I didn't think he was.
No.
Yeah, how are you doing?
Oh, that was another comment, John.
How's your summer
Not
going?
surprised.
Pretty good so
I am surprised, because he was smart enough to
Gotten
do
in
Well,
any
that's
trouble?
what Brian said. That's exactly what Brian said.
That's always a good thing.
Yeah.
Brian Baker.
What are your children
who,
doing this summer?
played
Cams and a lot of baseball
Mhm.
and
and,
tennis.
that was,
We'll
wow, this is
start
a bigger
football
crowd
next
than
month,
usual.
so
Oh, wow.
there's not many breaks.
Yeah.
He's, Brian said he's going to do time for that.
Oh, he's got
You're
to.
gonna take your picture.
Oh.
I know.
Oh,
Well, I'm not looking.
No.
I just remember his tag
Oh,
around
great.
You're
baseball
set.
field.
I don't remember him.
You
At
are.
least I'm dressed.
See, and I get to sit next to you.
Short, heavy set.
It doesn't get any better than this.
Huh. Don't remember them. Time?
At least you won't be in the magazine busted in the morning. See, you're gonna be
Star power.
Oh.
There you go.
You're ready for new.
Yeah.
No.
See, at least they're taking pictures. Now she's aiming it at me, which is making
Yeah.
me a little nervous
Because you're looking.
because I haven't done anything yet.
Want to call the June 2020, 2013 meeting, 2020, yeah. I cannot get the dates
We're
right.
in the long
Did
range.
a little fast
Yeah, long
forward
range
there.
planning. That's what planning's all about.
Been a long meeting already.
May 20th, 2013 meeting of the Farragut Municipal Planning Commission to order. Going to start out with
It's
June. June. Now I'm going backwards. The June meeting. Going to start out with citizens forum. If there's anyone in the audience who has questions, comment that aren't related to any of the items we're going to discuss tonight that aren't on the agenda, you can please come up to the microphone now. And I'd like to recognize our scout in the audience. And if you would, please come up to the microphone and tell us who you are and what badge you're working on and what your troop is. And we appreciate you coming.
Now we have a token.
Come up the microphone right over there at the podium.
There's another one too, Rita.
Okay.
Is it on? I'm Daniel, and I am from Troop 59, and I'm working on citizenship in the community.
Great, welcome, Daniel.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Can you come up here, please? And we have something we'd like to give you. Add that to your badge collection there. Thank you very much.
I am Matt Tambernini from Troop 15, and I'm working on the Communications Merit Badge.
Okay, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Anyone else with questions or comments before we get started? We'll move along to the approval of the minutes for the May 16th, 2013 meeting. Do we have any additions or changes that need to be made? Do I
I'll
have a
move for approval.
second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item number 3, appointment for a Farragut Municipal Planning Commission member as a representative of the Stormwater Advisory Committee. Do I have any nominations for that?
For the record, Ed Whiting is currently serving as our Stormwater Advisory Committee representative, and I believe he is still currently serving as the chairman of that committee.
Yes.
Okay.
Would he like to continue?
You.
I nominate Ed Whiting.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Ed, for taking your time and doing that, too.
Well, that's pretty interesting.
I think you have some good experience with that, too.
Well,
Uh,
get this last little thing done, that'd be nice.
Moving on to item number 4 now, discussion and public hearing on a final plat for the villas at Anchor Park, Phase 1, located on the north side of Turkey Creek Road, across from Anchor Park, 10.95 acres, 35 units, zoned R-4, Benchmark Associates applicant.
The plat that is before you is the final plat. It is obviously very familiar to you from the standpoint that you approved the concept plan and the preliminary plat last fall. This is Unit 1 of the subdivision, and it is the portion that fronts directly on Turkey Creek Road. Staff is recommending approval of this subdivision plat, subject to addressing items 1 through 20 at the staff recommendation at the list that's at your seats. Item number 20 being meet all town requirements. Most of these are just housekeeping type measures with clarification on the plat and that sort of thing. And then in addition to making sure that letters of credit are posted and that all the field items are addressed prior to the recording of the plat.
Do we have anyone with the applicant?
Benny Mormon with Benchmark Associates. We are in agreement with all the recommendations and have most of them already implemented.
Okay, good, thank you. Anybody having questions or comments?
I'll move for approval with the subject twos.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 5, discussion and public hearing on a site plan for Panda Express, 11482 Parkside Drive, located between J.C. Penney and Tennessee State Bank, 3.41 acres, zone C-1, Ray Flake applicant.
This one's also familiar, but for a very different reason. There was a site plan approved for this location actually in December, but that project is transitioned into a freestanding restaurant called the Panda Express. Your places with the staff recommendation list, staff is recommending approval of this site plan subject to addressing items 1 through 19, with number 19 being meet all town requirements. Again, all of these are just getting us some more information, postings of letters of credit and that type of thing. You can go through the list quickly. But the Panda Express will be, the front of the building will face Parkside Drive, as was approved with the TVA Federal Credit Union to the west of this. The driveways will be interconnected so that both businesses have access to the drive at JCPenney, and then also at this intersection which is a signalized intersection. This kind of gives you a little bit more of a bird's eye view so you get a better feel for it. And then this is the aerial photograph of the parcel, the TVA Federal Credit Union, of course, being in that northeast corner, vacant corner there at the JCPenney. And the bulk of this property is the very large detention basin that serves regionally, and then the 100-foot buffer. So it's just the front portion of the property that is being developed for the Panda Express. Just this portion right here. And this is what the building looks like. This is the architectural rendering. This is the side view, the rear view, and the front view. The blue things are windows right here. Those are all windows. And then this is the other side elevations of the building, and the elevation with the drive-through ordering window.
Ruth, on that one back, where is the shared driveway? Or 2 back, I guess.
The driveway actually connects this direction. If you remember, the Federal Credit Union comes around here, and here's the building. And then it goes out to Parkside Drive and shares with the JCPenney. You can see it more clearly on here in that the driveway will come up like this and connect over to here. And if you recall, the the Federal Credit Union kind of had the same thing that they have, is that there is the little loop, but the main drag is this section right here. This is a signalized intersection. This one is not. So that gives folks an opportunity with sight distance and things to exit at a signalized intersection.
Will you introduce yourself and give your address, please?
You bet. My name is Ray Flake. I'm from Civil Engineering Services out of Fairview, Tennessee. I am both the applicant and the engineer on the project. And we agree with all the staff recommendations and already implemented most of them. So.
Okay, good, good. Anyone have any questions or comments?
I'm looking at the elevations. The front elevation is actually, is that facing to the east? Is that, it's not actually facing Parkside? Am I interpreting that correctly?
I believe so, from what she was showing.
So it's really the side elevation is
correct.
the most visible elevation. Is this part of a corporate dress theme? Is that?
It is.
I see a lot of aluminum and some things that are a little unusual. I'm just trying to digest it.
Okay. Yes, it's part of their corporate package that they.
When I think of Panda Express, is that what used to be like in the malls, in the food courts?
There
in the
are
malls?
yes, there's quite a few of them in there.
Okay.
They have a lot of freestanding buildings now.
Okay.
Any more questions or comments? Do I have a motion?
I'll move for approval with the subject twos.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
One question we usually ask is, how soon can we start eating? Discussion and public hearing on a site plan for the Town of Farragut Outdoor Classroom, parcel 128, tax map 142, located on the southeast corner of North Campbell Station Road and the Farragut High School entrance, 1.4 acres, zoned OS-P.
In your packet is a write-up from Daryl Smith and Jason Scott, and I'd like to introduce Jason Scott, our stormwater coordinator, to present this to you all this evening.
Hey everyone, I'm Jason Scott. I'm the Town of Farragut Stormwater Coordinator. Back in 2010, I had the opportunity to attend an outdoor classroom celebration at Hall's Outdoor Classroom in North Knoxville. The community was highly involved in that event. The teachers were there, the kids were there, and I got to really see what an outdoor classroom space is, and I guess I'll talk about that a little bit. People are really familiar with parks, and you walk through parks and it's kind of a passive experience, but an outdoor classroom is a very hands-on experience where people will go into the space and have the opportunity to create and change the space itself. So after seeing that, I came back to the town and consulted with our Parks and Leisure Services director, and I tried to see if we had perhaps some land that we weren't using that wasn't pre-designated to something else. And we identified this lot, which was actually very close to the high school, which was ideal because the Hall's Outdoor Classroom actually is just across the stream from Hall's High School itself, so students can just cross that bridge and access it. And actually on the other side of it is a neighborhood, and residents of that neighborhood can just access that space. With this outdoor classroom, the idea is that we're looking to put in an interactive space that'll engage the community at large, organizations, Boy Scout troops in short and long-term projects, as well as the high school itself. Our Stormwater Advisory Committee is playing a big role in helping facilitate that, get this moving along. We have several representatives from the high school, or formerly from the high school, who are going to help facilitate that communication with the high school as a primary user because of their proximity to the space, but the space will also be open to the public at large. We're going to develop a system in which people can work with us to RSVP sections. If you'll notice on the picture, there's blank areas, and those spaces will be used for any number of projects that will be submitted and vetted, and then we'll work with those individuals to implement those projects. Something we're looking to do to kick it off, which we're really excited about, is to be able to offer some funding to people who have project ideas so that they can implement it at no cost to themselves. Because, you know, the idea of starting a community garden, butterfly garden, something like that is great, but if you have to pay for the plants or things like that, that might discourage participation. But last year we actually we won a photo competition and got some money from that, which we've set aside for the outdoor classroom, and we're looking to apply for some additional funds, and we're hoping to have between $500 and $1,500 to incentivize initial participation in those projects, to pay for materials, things like that. But we actually have representatives from McGill and Associates, who are the designers of this plan. I'm going to have them come up here and introduce themselves and kind of walk you through the amenities that are on the plan itself.
Thank you, Jason. My name is Gary McGill with McGill Associates, and the town asked us to help develop the outdoor classroom and design it, particularly this phase of it. We have done these before, and if you have questions, I won't go into a lot of detail. Jim Ford is with me tonight too. He's one of our landscape architects that will actually point out some of the primary elements, and we will go as deep into it as you wish or not. But also we can ask questions about the concept of an outdoor classroom and what some of the things are that are objectives of such a project in any questions that you have. I'd like Jim Ford, though, to come up, if that's okay, and describe the primary elements and what their purpose is in this preliminary design.
Good evening. As Gary said, I'm Jim Ford from McGill Associates. I see you all have the image in front of you. If you could just let me walk you through this design. This is the final concept that came out of two previous concepts. What we were trying to do was to create an outdoor classroom that fit Farragut and fit this site. If you were driving past this site, I think the first thing you would need to notice is this berm, which acts as a buffer between the road and the site activities. This screening buffer would have native and adapted plant materials. It would be an example of low water use gardening, as well as a buffer to this type of activity. It's a park, but there could be classroom activities going on at various times. As you come around the corner on School Access Road, you'll see a parking area. The parking area, it's only got a few spaces for speakers and people to come set up for activities, but it also has a bus pull in. We think that's important. If you're going to service groups, you really need to be able to get them there safely. Also, for accessibility reasons, we do have handicap parking and an offload area there. One thing I wanted to point out was, this area, this outdoor classroom, one of the themes or focuses was hydrology. How do we deal with runoff? How do we deal with environmental issues of development? This site serves as not only an outdoor classroom, but an example of some of the common principles that are modern and up to date that we could point to and say, how the outdoor classroom does that pervious parking area? Well, here we have an example of that. There's various ways you could go about doing this. It's done at some of your parks here, I've noticed. But that would be your first introduction to, one of the solutions to how do you deal with runoff in a parking area that you could point to developers and then other individuals. Off of this parking area, you'll see a nice landscaped area. That's a rain garden. Some of this water is treated, on site in these planted areas where the plants serve as a filter to that runoff. And it's good to point this out to people as well and say, well, maybe you don't have pervious paving, but here's a bioretention area or a rain garden that's low impact. It's beautiful. It looks great. And it's also a responsible way to deal with runoff. Connecting this site to other sites around here is the greenway. So we have a greenway corridor that cuts through. There's a maintenance entrance off the parking lot. Of course, you need to be able to get trucks in there to service this, but you need to be able to get the public from point A to point B. You'll notice on the long side of the property, it goes to the Solomon property, is what it's called there. That would go off site. Coming closer and in towards the site, you'll see a 20 by 40 shelter. This would serve as your classroom space, a meeting area. It keeps the sun and the rain off, so it's comfortable to hold those sort of classes. It would match sort of the roof, it would look like your other buildings and your other parks. It would match. In here also is a xeriscape landscaping example. You know, xeriscaping is very common. Some of you probably understand what I'm talking about. No water use gardening. If you're going to do landscaping, make this attractive for the community, why do you have to irrigate it when you can design it through xeriscape methods? I'd like to be able to incorporate that there as well. One of the other, going back to hydrology, features of this 20 by 40 is a rainwater collection cistern. You'll notice the blue circle, the bottom right of that building. That would serve as a visual example and a functional component that collects rainwater to use for watering. And what are we watering? Well, open to the public or to whatever groups would come out to the site. We have these planter areas. You could have the scouts or classrooms come out and actually do, exhibit gardens. Maybe they're experimenting with different grasses. Maybe they're experimenting with vegetables or agriculture. But they have a space that they can do that. Surrounding that space, of course, is ADA. It's all accessible. You have both a pervious sidewalk as well as a compacted stone walkway that goes all through that site. So it's completely accessible. We don't want to be able to, we want to be able to have everyone involved. If it's an outdoor classroom, you never know who your students are. Coming off that site, Jason pointed out these open areas, these open exhibit areas. This is really where the community gets involved. These are the sites that you can get sponsorship for and get community involvement in this site and whatever other programs this site houses. It's a blank page, basically. People can come out here and propose ideas, and the community can get involved with those groups. I think it's a positive for the community. I think it's attractive for the site. And it's definitely I think it will be an important spur off of your existing greenway. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Anyone on the planning commission have a question?
I do. What's to keep people from accessing the trail from Camel Station?
So if you're walking along Campbell Station on the sidewalk, what's to prevent?
Well, you said
hearings?
service vehicles would enter to go over to the. Oh, they enter up there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We always have bollards at the entrances of all our walking trails, and they're removable.
Okay.
That we have all over town, so that our maintenance vehicles can access, but it keeps other vehicles out from accessing.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions?
I have a question. You have these raised planters. Who, you say that someone can take one of the raised planters and do an experiment. Right. Who is going to manage that so that you know that they're not all, someone's not ripping out somebody else's stuff that they just planted?
Right. It depends on how the community organizes the maintenance of this. Of course, I've done this in the past with groups that have used parks. I've done this in the past with groups that have used, just general maintenance. Oftentimes when you have a school nearby, it's the school.
Okay.
It's the school that would do that. And so all of your stakeholders are responsible for figuring out how to best organize the leasing of those spaces.
If I might add, in some of the previous outdoor classrooms, as the classroom becomes more used by not just students, but other groups, we've had garden clubs and we've had other organizations within communities that have realized what they want to do there, and we or you all have to decide on how you're going to organize that, but typically we also give them some responsibilities in doing that as well. So over time it can actually be shared, organized, but the responsibility shared by several different groups, not just falling on one group or another.
Okay.
As people realize what it is.
Jason, have you got a structure in mind?
Tentative. One thing that we have operating at the town of Farragut is we have an AmeriCorps program. So we have an AmeriCorps National Service member who serves for 10-month terms, and they're going to be devoted, one of their primary responsibilities is going to be devoted to facilitating the usage of this, to keep people active, keep people motivated, keep people aware that the space is there, and keep groups using it. So that's going to be a big part, and part of why Hall's Outdoor Classroom is one of the most successful classrooms in the area is because they have a consistent AmeriCorps presence from year to year that works with the teachers to keep the program going from continuity. Also, we'll probably set up some kind of resource on the website that'll allow us to interact with the community, to keep track of what spaces are allocated to who. When those spaces run their life and somebody's no longer interested in the space, it'll become available, and we can archive that and show past projects that people have done, which can lead to other ideas that people might have looking at that, creating a visual history of the site. Mm-hmm.
Anyone else have any questions or comments?
I guess I'd like to make a comment on this because I've been fairly intimately involved in it. And we've gone through a goodly number of iterations with a lot of people on this, and this final shot at it, I think, is pretty darn good. And there's a lot of real interest in it from the schools and the people that want to use that sort of thing.
Community, okay. Anybody else, any questions or comments?
I have a question, and I'm sure Ed's group has spent a lot of time kind of talking about the parking. But is the shelter going to be put on the pavilion rental program? And if it is, I was going to be concerned that if there was okay, so it's not going to be part of that same parks program for different pavilions.
No, this is going to be designed differently from the standpoint, this is designed for a classroom setting type situation
Like
rather
built-in
than picnic
benches maybe,
tables
or
and,
chairs? Or something?
that eventually might happen, but funding on the front
Okay.
end, it'll be kind of blank.
So that kind of solves the parking issue. That's one of the things I was thinking about. And then once the trail does get kind of interconnected with some of the adjacent properties, how do we keep it from becoming a trailhead? I mean, it's okay if you got one or two people there, but we just fill up that parking lot really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, ideally, we'll interconnect when the property directly to the east is developed. That'll interconnect to something, and then we have a grand plan that actually ties a lot of trails down Turkey Creek and North Fork Turkey Creek and some other things.
Right.
But I guess we planned some consideration for that, just thinking about, I mean, how do we discourage that type of a use?
Right. Initially, when we were planning the concept, it had very minimal or no parking. It was actually initially a pedestrian facility, but there was concern about access. But there was also concern with the access, that same type of thing. You know, who's to say that people aren't just going to park there to just access the trails as opposed to use it as an outdoor classroom space? And that's likely going to become an enforcement issue. And
some signage.
Some signage that notes, you know, for outdoor classroom use only for those parking spots. And it may actually take calling the sheriff's office and having that happen a time or two so people understand that, oh, if I'm not using the space for that, I can go through it and utilize it, but it should be used primarily for people who are actively participating in the space.
If I might comment on some experience with that in other places, is to have some control. They can be passive or active, even disallowing, not just disallowing, but preventing it if necessary. It's an important subject, though, to talk about early on, in that if you don't and it goes the other way, it's hard to back up. So it's something that's important, very, very important, but we should develop a plan at the start and then stay with that if we can to not let it become a trailhead simply for the trail.
I just hate to see the day that if it became an issue, you know, we'd have to put up gates, which is kind of weird to have public property that's not accessible. I mean, that's not the image that we want to project, but it sounds like there's definitely some thought. I think signage would go a long way. I think it would probably discourage 99% of the problem.
And we don't want it to be punitive
Right.
for people either. We want it to be comfortable and so forth. But it is the way to do it. Signage is generally very effective if people understand what it is. And this is not a park. This is not a park that's this is a functional park.
Right.
It's a park that's dynamic. So
educational. I mean,
educational, exactly. Right. But signage is generally very effective once the community realizes what it